Imagine not even being a teen and having to lay down on the table and having your kids examined by doctors because of what your alleged uncle did to you. Imagine having to go through each traumatizing event in detail in a room with detectives because of what your uncle did. Imagine going through the itself. Grown women have a hard time dealing with this. So again, imagine it for my daughter as a child.
Now imagine this. Imagine an uncle that does this to his niece who is 7 years old and 8 years old, going on for over a year. Imagine if a district attorney and a judge said, hey, when you get out of prison, you'll only need to register for 10 years. Imagine if we had a system that considered someone who would do such a thing a low risk to reoffend. Imagine if we had a system that said, you'll get sentenced to 8 years in prison, but don't worry, you'll have parole eligibility within 2 years of your sentencing date. Well, you don't need to imagine, because that's what's happening here today. And that's what happens here almost every day as we cover parole hearing after parole hearing, where the system simply does not understand how dangerous these chomos are. Now I grow sick and tired of covering these monsters who do the worst to little ones, their own flesh and blood. But to have him come here and sit in front of the parole board and say, it happened one time, it was a mistake, or it was the alcohol that caused me to do it. And then to listen to the parole board, for the most part, don't worry, they will come in and do a decent job. But Mike Pohl with the coddling and talking about as if it was alcohol that made him do it. It is insane. Now, I have to apologize about this hearing because there is background noise. There is an interview room next door, and for whatever reason, they don't shut them up. So you're going to have to hear the noise. It's frustrating, but this is an important hearing to listen to. It's important to hear just how broken the system is. You see, we know monsters exist, but the system that's put in place to protect us, that is something we simply cannot forgive. And with that, let's jump in.
Curvan Foster, inmate number 436527.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Curvan Foster 436527. He is serving a sentence of 15 years, execution suspended after 8 years, with 10 years probation to follow for sexual assault, third illegal sexual contact with victim under the age of 13. As of today, records reflect a parole eligibility date of January 13, 2025 at 50%. There is victim input in this case. There is also an offender accountability plan for the offender. It has been reviewed and shows the offender has completed the following programs: the short-term sex treatment program, and he also works in the kitchen, utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system. The offender overall score on the SRT falls within the moderate range of risk for recidivism. And utilizing the static 99R, the offender overall score for the sexual offense recidivism falls within the low to moderate range. Mr. Foster, this is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say I'm sorry to my niece. I'm sorry to her mom, my brother, and I'm also sorry for letting my family down. I should never did what I did. I wasn't in the right state of mind, but I have grown to be a better person, and I would never commit this crime again.
You say again.
All right, Mr. Foster, is that everything you wanted us to know?
Yes.
Okay. So the way this is going to proceed is each of us will take a turn asking you questions based on the documents that were available to us. And when we're done with the questions, we'll hear from the Office of Victim Services. Then the board will discuss your case and make a decision. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll begin with my colleague, Mr. Holt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Foster.
Good morning.
In reading your case, we had the opportunity to look at the only program that you had to that you were able to take was the short-term program, and that you participated somewhat in group. And just wanted to hear you reflect as to what you learned from that group, how you would apply it to your life today.
Will apply it to my life is think before I even make an action.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm very nervous.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you learn? Okay, go ahead. Continue.
No, I'm done.
Did you learn about risk factors for you?
Yes.
And what are they?
I'm sorry. Don't
I don't know that yet.
So let me see if I can get somewhere. So all over your paperwork, it talked about drinking,
yeah.
and I'm struggling with that because either you didn't have a substance use evaluation, or you didn't tell the truth when you were talking to the person who did the substance use evaluation. Because it shows a 1, which shows absolutely no problem. But everything that I've read, you attribute alcohol, or in that case, substance use, to be one of the big things here. Can you talk about that? And can you also address why you think DOC believes that you don't have a problem?
I'm not a big drinker, but that day I had drank a lot. Like I just went crazy drinking that day.
So, but what yes, go ahead.
I wouldn't say that like I'm an alcoholic. I really don't like drinking like that. But if I'm like in my feelings or something like that, I will just get a drink.
And how much do you drink?
Eventually, they agree.
I don't drink a lot.
You don't.
I'll
So you
probably
don't
drink.
get drunk.
No, I would drink like once in a blue moon, but like before I came in here, I knew how to handle drinking.
This is what you have to do.
So how do we get to the fact that you said that you attributed this to
have been assigned to your case.
being intoxicated?
I sent them documentation from the public defender's office, and Virginia approved Mr.
How do we get to that?
And
There's a couple of things in your evaluation. You said you got another hearing. I don't know if you're hearing the same background noise that we're hearing, but in the next room from you is a hearing. So you're just gonna have to try to focus on what I'm talking with you about, right? So to go back again, all over the evaluation and such, what was talked about with people who investigated this and such, was that alcohol played a big role in this.
I was
Yeah.
If
communicating.
you don't drink that much
Told me that I have
and
to
you weren't
have
intoxicated,
documents or other
was
verification.
that the case or were you?
Yes,
So
that was the case.
court order.
So how much? Because 1 or 2 doesn't do it.
No, like I said, I drink, that day I had a lot. Like I just chugged the 4 Loco and had a little bit more than that. I don't know how many cups, but I had a little bit more.
So let's go back then a little bit, because you had also said that you, during this time that you engaged in sexual abusive behavior from what age to what age with your niece?
Well, when I was 17,
Yeah, but when did it start?
yeah, when I was 17.
But now you're at.
So she was 7, you were 17. It didn't
Yes.
happen over a period of time.
No, that never happened before.
Okay. So it was this one time and that was it.
Yes.
Investigator.
So let me go back again to what I asked before, and that was, you have a substance use score of a 1. Yet during this offense, which is a very serious offense, you were intoxicated. How can that be? When they asked you about substance use, when you got your evaluation, did you say, just like you just told me, where I had to drill down to the fact that, yeah, you were highly intoxicated when this happened? Is that how you handled DOC? Yeah, I really don't have a problem. I only.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with drinking. No,
Except, right.
Yeah,
Except
I'm
when you
not.
get highly intoxicated, you sexually assault the kid.
Yeah,
That's a problem, right? Can we agree on that?
yes.
I was challenging my conviction.
So one of the other programs that you're supposed to take was Voices. And that takes, and you didn't have the opportunity to take that,
You're trying to
but
follow.
that gives,
That was done.
insight,
The prosecutor.
attempts to give insight into the damage that you caused another person.
That.
What do you think is the damage that you caused another person?
Sufficient evidence on that claim. And my argument is that the state is holding on to the evidence. So.
I know it's real bad.
The investigator.
Like
Investigations.
I changed your life.
Obtain the documents that I need from the state police department or the prosecutor.
You're gonna have to speak up.
I said, I know it's bad and I really changed the life.
But how do you think she feels?
That's for his.
How did you affect her?
So.
Like the way how I think she feels angry, sad, scared.
But I didn't have no communication with him at all.
She don't want to see me. She don't want to talk or anything.
I hired him is to review.
How about, how is she impacted with relationships that she'll eventually have?
No bad. I don't think I'll ever be in a relationship after this.
Who else do you think you hurt in this process?
My family, her mom, my brother.
Prior to the hearing?
Yeah.
At visits.
Were they at the Eagle Walker?
That was at Oregon.
I
I had a visit prior to.
So let me go a couple different places here. You want to sponsor eventually to your mother in West Haven?
Yes.
And so have you gotten any plans? Have you devised any plans what you're going to do for work when you're released?
Well, when I get home, I'm gonna start looking for a job, like go on Indeed.com, fill out applications. Because I want to, like, later on in the future, I want to start up my own business truck. I mean, my own food truck.
So you know that there's going to be constraints about you finding a job, right?
Yes.
Have you
It's
ever thought of?
I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say, like, it's going to be real hard for me,
Our communication
but
was.
I think I'll find something for me.
Where do you think you can get support for employment?
You weren't allowed to send him letter saying if you need.
Oh, I could have sent him a letter, but.
Would say, like, retail? I don't know.
Where do you think you can get support in finding work?
Well, I've been on the phone with my cousin, and I had asked her if, like, whenever I come home, or if you're still a manager at this place, you think you get me in? And she said she'll try. She'll talk to the hiring manager to talk to her boss and get me in.
Okay. What do you think the role is of a parole officer or probation officer? I know you don't have any criminal history. What do you think you would do with that?
Just keep in check with him. Make sure I don't do the same offense or do a different offense.
I still represent myself in my 80s.
And if I'm struggling finding work, who do you think you should talk to?
June 2021.
Right, talk to family.
Let me help, right? Because one of the things that you need to think about is when you're being released, what a solid release plan would be, whether it's on parole or probation. That parole officer and that probation officer, depending upon what happens here, are here to be of assistance in your reintegration in the community. And if you're struggling with anything or you need support, that's a good person to start with,
I don't know whether it was in December.
right?
I think it was earlier than
So, in other words, asking for help.
that. Somewhere around that time, but it was in 2021.
And that's something that's totally okay to do, right?
Yes.
And there's other things called reentry services.
Over
I mean,
2022.
you're right next door to New Haven, full of reentry services. Those are things that you should be thinking about when you're thinking about release, right? Because the last thing you want to do is on the last day, walk out the door and, now what do I do? So you really need to be thinking about that.
Okay.
When it comes to support the community, so you have never engaged with AA or anything like that?
No. I've been trying to get to, like, different programs, but they just write me back saying that I'm on a waiting list. And
I'm gonna see what other questions other board members might have.
If that's the one that.
Madam Chair.
Certainly. So, Mr. Foster, I just want to go over a couple of things with you. You have a 15-year sentence. So when you finish serving the 8 years and you're out in the community on probation, you have 7 years of this sentence hanging over your head. You violate probation, and you can be brought back and made to serve those 7 years. You're aware of that, I hope.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
You have 10 years ahead of you on the state sex offender registry.
It was the amount of money that.
So while you're living with your mom in West Haven, her address will be on the sex offender registry. Do you think she's aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. And you have a standing criminal protective order against you through the year 2052. Can you tell me what you understand that means?
I can't be close to the victim, can't have any contact with her.
Okay, and that's through a third party as well. And it's important that you understand that because this is a family situation. And you cannot reach out to her on social media.
You know, Michael Davidson.
Yes.
And
So when you were interviewed by the police, you indicated that the reason for this offense, which was on multiple occasions, not just once, the victim was 7 at one point and 8 at another point. You blamed feeling frustrated on why you committed these offenses. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I used to have, but I mean, I can't say I used to, but I still have like anger issues. So that like some little thing will just get me pissed off. But I've been working on that.
How have you been working on that?
Like, and here it been going on a lot. Like someone will just say something crazy to piss me off, or if I'm playing basketball, someone might do something stupid, and like most of the time I will get mad, but I just found a way to just walk away from the situation.
Okay. Well, obviously you're managing the intensity of those feelings because you don't have any disciplinary reports during this incarceration. You know, they do have anger management as a program there in the facility, and I think you might really benefit from that because there are specific techniques that they can teach you of how to regulate your emotions so that you're not acting on them, especially, you know, as you did so negatively against a family member.
Those are response. That document right here, where it says Austin at the bottom, I see. That is a response.
In this situation,
That I filed while I was still.
you isolated your victim. You sent her brother off to keep him out of the way so you could perpetrate these crimes. And then you made sure to tell the victim to keep silent. All of that true?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that your actions were premeditated. Do you know what that word means? Planned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you knew what you were going to do. And you also groomed the victim. Maybe that's a term you learned in the short-term program, because you were introducing her to pornography to get her more comfortable with the things that you wanted to do to her. Is that correct?
Yes.
This was in Virginia.
So when you stumbled through your answer to my colleague about risk factors, alcohol is one, but you also identified being alone with a girl in the house. And obviously your use of pornography would also present a risk factor. Because on underdeveloped minds, minds of young people,
I would assume that process.
It makes an indelible, deep impression.
So now I gotta go through that process.
And it becomes something that you attempt to emulate, right? You were acting out things in the pornography that you watched with your victim?
Yes.
Before we turn to DOC.
I read that there may have been another victim.
I already have the approval.
Have you
for
faced that as well in the programming that you participated in?
the lawsuit.
But no, there's not no other victim. Those was like examples, but
What was the word you used?
examples, like
You mean-
I wasn't talking about
the
my
approval-
case, but
you talking about the approval
I was just
from
making an example of something else.
No, the DOC never gave you.
Well, somebody walked in on you when you were with another minor. It's all documented in the police report. So, very concerning crimes that you were committing, sir. Do you understand the concept of alcohol as a disinhibitor? Something that would allow you to do things that you wanted to do without holding back? Do you think that you were using the alcohol in order to commit these crimes and make you less aware of having good judgment? Because you
Yeah,
knew what you were doing was wrong. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been telling the victim to keep quiet and isolating her. You didn't want to be caught.
That wouldn't be correct.
Hold on, right there. Similarly, we paying through all.
So talk to me about what you learned in your job in the kitchen that's going to make you a valuable employee out in the community, because you have a very limited work history.
That these.
to keep busy and try to make myself
And writing, I did that in writing. Because they was visiting me.
like a better employee.
How do you do that?
Like ask the boss, like if I got nothing else to do, just ask the boss if he need help with anything, or do anybody else need help?
Visitation,
So you work with your teammates,
stop.
you show up on time, you stay till the job's done.
The reason why.
Yes.
All that's about having a strong work ethic. And you need to learn to be able to talk about that and your strengths in order for an employer to go, I want you for this job.
The same setup will be with the private investigator and the forensic expert.
So you're not eligible for release until the middle of January.
Communication wasn't private. As far as-
What do you think you could do to make good use of the months that you have ahead of you before your release?
Well, right now I've been reading
Like, I don't understand.
and
How was it coming and y'all accommodating them to visit me?
working on like entrepreneurship.
And read my letters, and if I was to call them, I gotta call them.
Like I got a lot of notes on what to do, how to start a business. But I'm still reading.
Okay. So that's good to prepare for your future and to reach your goal of the food truck. What could you be doing to work on yourself?
Well, they always make it to my
Well,
complaint. I never-
right now, I work on myself by meditating. Like sometimes I was sitting in myself by myself and just close my eyes, don't have nothing on, and just think.
Or my written letters or some other complaint that
That's
I
good for
filed.
your emotional self-regulation as well. But, Mr. Foster, I'm looking for, you've got 3-4 months ahead of you. You can read at home, you can meditate at home, but what can you do tapping into the supports and the resources that are there at the facility to better yourself and prepare to be successful without returning to prison?
I don't, it was in 2002, but I don't remember the date.
They had trouble. Talk to the CEOs.
August
How to just
I want to stay like.
stay out of
And
conflict.
September 5th, in that time frame.
Well, that will be important, because if you're granted and then you get a DR, that could change the decision. But what I was pointing at really was, you still have programs on your OAP. My colleague talked to you about the Voices program. I talked to you about anger management.
Or a scheduled meeting.
There's things that you can take advantage of while you're there that could be helpful to you. I'm concerned that you have a drug score of 1, so you're not going to be put in a TIA program.
Right.
But I'm going to encourage you to talk to the counselors there about taking something to learn more about alcohol addiction and the abuse of alcohol. Where were you getting alcohol at age 17?
Sometimes when my brother leaves something in the refrigerator, I just go in there and drink it.
It's important for your mom to know that because you're going to be living in her house.
Yeah, like did you say
Where else would you get alcohol?
Friends.
Well, this happened when my forensic expert tried to hand deliver some material to me and they rejected it. And they told him that
Well, I don't have any more questions for you at this time, Mr. Foster. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Panel Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Foster. My colleagues have asked you quite a few questions already. And hearing their questions and hearing your responses, I do have some concerns, that it took 12 weeks of sex offender treatment program, and you really had a difficult time coming up with what were the things that really you got from it. And that really gave me a lot of concern.
So that's how the conversation.
And also the fact that, that there is this issue with addiction, and
how can y'all open this?
as my colleague shared with you, you didn't qualify for a tier program. So I would also agree that you need to be looking a little bit more programming, I think, while you still have some time remaining. For yourself to kind of give more preparation to you being able to come outside with a lot more information about what are those triggers for you and what are those things you really have to kind of take a look at while you're out there. But I don't really have a lot of questions. My colleagues asked quite a few questions already for you. Good luck to you.
Go ahead and do it.
So at this time, Mr. Foster, we're going to turn the hearing over to the Office of Victim Services. During this part of the hearing, you are not to speak. Okay? Mr. Jesus?
Are you just talking to me?
And the ever tell you to direct you to do anything else other than
You're still muted.
Good morning, board members. My apologies. I do have the mother of the victim via Teams. This is your opportunity to unmute your microphone and you may address the board. I am to remind you that you to address the board only and you may begin.
Okay. All right. I would like to start off by saying the crimes committed against my child has changed my family, and of course, not in a good way. I will start with the effect it had on my daughter. My daughter had to go through therapy to try and cope with what happened, and to this day, she's still attempting to cope with it. My daughter went through a period of time where she was scared of men and was only comfortable around her father, my brother, and her stepfather. Before the assaults against her, my daughter was a big hugger. Now she doesn't like any type of physical affection, whether it's a hug or a kiss on the cheek. My daughter's personality completely changed. She went from being a social butterfly to being an introvert. She goes through episodes of paranoia where she's sometimes scared of being in places with a lot of people. She still suffers from nightmares and can be triggered. Just this past school year, a male student triggered her unknowingly to the point where she called me from school crying and I had to pick her up. Though she has overcome a lot, there's still a lot more work to be done. Just imagine being a child and the person that's supposed to love and help protect you, your quote unquote uncle, ends up being the one who hurts, violates, and disrespects you. Imagine not even being a teen and having to lay down on the table and having your privates examined by doctors because of what your alleged uncle did to you. Imagine having to go through each traumatizing event in detail in a room with detectives because of what your uncle did. Imagine going through the assault itself. Grown women have a hard time dealing with this. So again, imagine it for my daughter as a child. Like I previously stated, this affected my family. My son deals with the fact that he wasn't old enough to help or save his little sister from this. He is now very protective of his sister. And when I explained this hearing was happening, my son's exact words was, they need to keep that monster in jail. And honestly, I agree. The street, the streets and his family is much safer with him in there. And lastly, how it affected me. My initial emotion to what my daughter told me was anger towards Curvan, then sadness for my child. As a victim myself, I never wanted my daughter to go through that. And again, to learn it was someone that I watched grow up and thought loved my child. Sorry.
Take your time.
Oh, gosh. Okay. And again, to learn it was someone that I watched grow up and thought loved my child hurt me to my core. I still struggle with the fact my child went through this. And sometimes find myself crying because of the hurt and pain. Just caused my child. Oh, all right. We are still attempting to heal from this. We are still attempting to heal from this. So why should he be able to live somewhat of a normal life, free, when my family is struggling every day? My child is scared to see this man and asks me to do what I can to make sure he stays behind bars, and that's exactly what I plan to do. Oh gosh. He is not rehabilitated. Rehabilitation consists of owning up to actions and genuinely being apologetic for them. This can't be the case if he's lying, telling people he's in jail because my kid's father was mad he wouldn't babysit. And to be completely honest, being in the custody of his mother won't better the situation either, seeing that she also won't allow for him to take accountability, telling her family members he just touched my daughter inappropriately by accident. He did more than that. He raped my child. And because all of this and more, I don't think or feel he should be released from prison sooner than what he was sentenced to, because even that time isn't enough. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you, Mr. Jesus. Mr. Foster, you're going to need to get stand up and get the CO. You can't.
Ms. Turner, you were muted for a moment.
Okay. Could you stand up and get the CO? We need to turn your sound back on.
just asking me, sitting right there.
We need some help with getting the audio reconnected, please.
Just on mute. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
All right, Mr. Foster, at this point, we're going to discuss your case. You can listen, please don't interrupt. Mr. Pohl?
I showed them the letter where.
So,
Fine to the case.
my impression on this case, certainly the victim and the entire family is really traumatized by what happened. As they should be. This isn't something that just happened. You know, very much more severe than. Mr. Foster did take the short-term program. I'm really, based upon the report and his interview today, I'm really struggling with if he, you know, really took much away from that in his participation. He participated some, but not a whole lot in what was going on. You know, as other risk factors were talked about, the one that I honed in on was alcohol, because it was all over this. And, you know, we have a substance use score of 1, which DOC should take a look at, because when it's part of the instant offense, it's certainly not a 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was just based on an interview or not, but he certainly needs support when it comes to that.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
So what I took away from your questioning of him is that he's trying to avoid alcohol becoming a flag,
right,
in his case.
Yeah.
And so there may have been some manipulation there. He seems at other times to accept partial responsibility, but not for, you know, the full extent
Right.
of his acts. You know, he admits to the oral sex, he denies that he forced intercourse. So it seems like that's a similar parallel of how he's approaching the alcohol issue in this case.
Right. And, you know, in the same light, when we're, I tried to explore voices somewhat, you know, it really took some digging. The programming's not there. You know, and it certainly, for me, it needs to be. You did point out the employment piece, you know, where there isn't any kind of vocational skills there, you know. He is doing some work in the kitchen.
And they actually have some business management vocational type programming. If, you know, he really does want to do this food truck thing that he could really benefit from.
Could really benefit from.
He didn't ever say he couldn't.
You know, and, you know, everything put together, certainly Mr. Foster's not ready to go home today. I hear the victim, although I'm in a place where I would like to
investigator being assigned
deny for a good period of time, and bring him back, because I would like the stringent, and I heard the victim talk about, you know, just to be free. When you're on parole,
I thought that I am my own attorney.
the SMU Special Management Unit, and you're on GPS monitoring constantly, and, you know, review that all the time. And while you're out, are participating in sexual behavior, you know,
Higher level of accountability for completing those programs.
very
And-
much higher. But for me, where he is right now, in understanding, my understanding is that he hasn't been reviewed for DOC halfway house yet, because he's not even close to qualifying for that review. I think it would be a good idea to
He said, well, you haven't asked for a lawyer.
deny today, bring him back. I would almost say in 2026.
Oh, I'm looking at July of 2026.
And that's what I thought,
Yeah.
which would be 2 years.
Yeah,
If,
that's the
if,
goal. If the
if-
next panel grants him.
if things change and
Yeah.
if we can get some more insight in, that piece, take a look to have parole, as you said, a higher level of supervision.
To ensure the
because-
programs get done and
Right,
that he achieves some level of stability and independence.
right.
I mean, ideally he would come out at 29 and be in a halfway house and be adulting.
Right.
Your thoughts, Mr.
I would
Anderson?
concur with my colleague as well. I mean, I would like to see him complete the programming, which I think would be very beneficial for him in the long run, and hopefully, allow him to gain some insight into what some of his behaviors really are, and how they are impacting something outside.
And take full accountability for the breadth of his crimes. So,
I think we're old
so
time.
the idea of a July 2026 rehear would afford him 2 years on special parole at that higher level of supervision and accountability if the next panel finds him suitable. So for today, it's nature and circumstance, inadequate program participation, and evidence of offender change.
And,
Injury and impact.
Yes.
That's
and
important.
I'd also like to add to that inadequate release plan.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'd really like to, we're talking about this offense occurred,
Communication between.
2016.
this offense occurred 8 years ago,
I said communication, I mean.
when Mr. Foster was 19. So to actually figure out how he's going to go out to the community.
Well, it came to light 8 years ago,
Yeah.
but there was a
Yeah.
2-year delay reporting. So he was 17 when he was
Right.
offending. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And action warning.
All right. And so we're ready, Mr. Foster. In the matter of Curvan Foster Jr., inmate number 436527, there is a motion to deny parole for the following reasons: the nature and circumstances of your offenses, the injury and impact caused to the victim and the victim's family, your inadequate program participation and evidence of offender change, and an inadequate release plan. I further move to rehear you in July of 2026 with the recommendations that you remain DR-free, complete additional programming. It consists of things like voices, anger management, good intentions, some of which are on your OAP, and to revisit your drug and alcohol score such that you participate in a tier program. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So, Mr. Foster, we're going to give you another try at this, but you got a lot of work to dig in and do. So you need to start writing, talking to the counselor, and getting into programs. We wish you much success, sir.
Good luck, sir.
Okay, thank you.
This concludes the hearing for Curvan Foster 436527. Mr. Foster, can you tell the officer to come in for us, please? Thank you. You'll receive all this in writing.
Okay, and they denied. They gave a 2-year breather for the victim, at least a little bit of time not to worry, to know, to quote, as she said, this monster will be locked up, but he will show up again. And when he does, we will cover it. It will be in the return of playlist. We are able to do this because of our Sir Richard and Lady Holly spreadsheets. But I want to let you know something. Oh. It is really hard watching these hearings. And you see it time and time again. It's like you've seen one, you've seen them all, but it still never ceases to shock me. And again, it doesn't shock me that chomos exist, that monsters exist, that an uncle could do this to his own biological niece. But what shocks me always is the system He only needs to register when he gets out for 10 years. When that registry is done, he can do whatever he wants. He can go in a playground. He can be, whatever it is. It's a 10-year registry. When the parole board, Mike Pohl, I mean, he's nuts. I mean, we know he's nuts. He is. This is not the place for him. He should not be a parole board member. For those of you who don't know, his history, his experience, his qualifications was being a middle school history teacher. And I've said it 100 times. I bet he was one of the best history teachers. He's so understanding and patient. But you can't be understanding and patient with manipulative chomos. You have to understand that it wasn't the alcohol that made him do it. He didn't have any outside factors that influenced it, that messed up his decision making. His brain is wired this way. He likes little ones. It's what he thinks and sleeps and dreams and obsesses about, and always will. And it's insane that people on the parole board could actually just accept for what he says. Oh, well, it's strange. Your classification says you have just a 1, so you don't have a big substance abuse problem. But let's focus on this, that you do. See, you see it's a problem when you drink. You do this to children. I'm happy Turner was there to call it out, right? She was there to lay down the facts. And then what sends a shiver down your spine when they talk about the PSI report, how someone had walked in on him with someone else, another child. And it just makes you wonder, how many victims does he have? How many? People don't get caught on the first time. People do this for years. You can't even imagine it. You're an adult man and its 7-year-old niece. It was bad when in Connecticut you even get the sentence he got, because we're so used to just probation, 2 years, 3 years. He ends up getting 15 years. They suspend all of it but 8. It says here on the sheet that it's sexual intercourse. That's what they have. A 9/29/2016. It says that he wasn't arrested until 4/5/2021. It makes you wonder how many years this went on. He sentenced June 14, 2022 to 8 years. His maximum release date is 1/12/2029. He's going to be coming up for parole in a year. He'll end up getting out before, in just a year. They always let him out. It's just the way it is. Would be my sad guess. But he had a parole hearing. If you can imagine this from the victim's perspective, June 14, 2022, the ink had hardly dried when he has a parole hearing after a sentencing date, August of 2024. And that's just sick. And it's important to remember the victims, they don't know whether he's going to get parole or not. This eats at them every day. You can't sleep. You can't think. It will just, we hear this time and time again. And it's resetting that clock to 2 years. It's some grace, but that clock starts ticking real loud as soon as that first year comes around. But don't worry, everybody. He can be fixed. He'll take some programs, right? Right? Don't worry. When when the 10 years are up, he won't need to register because he'll be fixed. His brain will be rewired. How old will he be? He was born in 97. So do some quick math. I don't know. I guess when he's 40 something years old, he won't be a chomo anymore. We all know that. So don't worry. Guess he could become an elementary school teacher like Mike Pull. And with that, I'll let you go.
Imagine not even being a teen and having to lay down on the table and having your privates examined by doctors because of what your alleged uncle did to you. Imagine having to go through each traumatizing event in detail in a room with detectives because of what your uncle did. Imagine going through the assault itself. Grown women have a hard time dealing with this. So again, imagine it for my daughter as a child.